voices, and sacred bones. This is a space for grounded conversations about creativity, spirit, story, and deeper wisdom. I'm with my hosts, Jillian Starman. Say hello, Jillian.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. And Joanne Sprott. Say hello, Joanne.
Hello.
Thank you very much. And we're so delighted you're with us, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast distributor. Thank you so much for being here. And I am going to turn this fabulous conversation over to Jillian, who's hosting it today. Take it away, Jillian.
So, welcome to today's episode. And the conversation today is going to revolve around the infinite line. So, most of us have been taught to think about the things that we do in life as a series of finish lines. So, we graduate, whether that's high school, college, wherever, we get a job, we build a business, we retire. These are all finish lines. But what if life isn't a finish line at all? What if it's an infinite line? Ooh. So, what do we think about that? I'm going to start with Jean and see what her insight is on infinite line.
I tell you, I have been thinking about this for some time because I don't look at it in that fashion. That's quite linear when you think about it in that way. To me, an infinite line is all about connection and relationship because our infinite line infinitely gets interrupted when we come into this fabulous life that we call uh, our human existence. But it doesn't finish when we pass, it continues regardless. And the thing is, between our birth and our death, it has so many intersections and it takes so many shapes and so many forms. And it crosses over itself so many times. And I love the way connections are formed as we go in those moments of intersection and in those moments of, I think I'll just take a turn here and see what's that way because, my infinite line stays with me everywhere I go. And there are other aspects to it too. And I will bet you Joanne probably has a couple of them
too. Oh, thanks, Jean.
Hey, you're welcome.
The infinite line. Well, the infinite part of it relies on the idea that time is real. And I think time is part of an illusion that we play with when we come into our lives here. So definitely not a line for me. However, I am very fond of spirals, which include a line in them. And they are very convenient for building structures here in our relative universe. So I use them in my own practice and in dealing with my clients as a journey to the center of ourselves and back out again at another level. That's what I like about spirals is they're you can call it a line, but it's also going in a circle and it's also in 3D. So it also keeps moving to different levels up and down as well. And I think it's a great metaphor for the human journey that we're constantly getting that same question handed to us again at different levels of our lives as we go through them. So my line is curved.
Hey.
So this is Jillian back again. And I think that as both of you are talking, the word that comes to my mind is iteration. So we do, we act, we learn, and then we go back and we add what we've learned to what we do next. And so that's kind of a whole growing process. And to me, it's lifelong learning. Because I remember, when I was a youngster coming out of high school, like, oh, I'm done learning. And then, people come out of college, like, I'm done learning. And it's like, no, this is an ongoing process of blending the things that you learn and experience into where you're going in your life. And like Jean was saying, sometimes that takes twists and turns. Sometimes rabbit holes show, and off we go down the rabbit hole. And it may be the right one, or we learn from it and we go in a different direction. So I think it's all about choice in what we do in life. So I'm going to hand it back over to Jean because I can see the wheels turning.
My wheels are always turning, Jillian. And I listening to Joanne and to yourself, it doesn't escape me that while we are speaking about an infinite line in different aspects of it, we're also speaking about some similar things. And everything is so multi-layered. So a line that we see, do you know if you draw a line on a piece of paper with a 2HD pencil, it has a certain thickness and it has a certain intensity. And if you were to take a magnifying glass and get closer and closer and closer to it, it would look much bigger and much deeper in its intensity. And I think that's true of any parts of our lives, especially where things intersect. So whether it's a relationship, whether it's a decision we have to make about a path we're going to change, because of course, as our lives change, as we get older, we take different pathways. And there's a choice point there. You know, that's quite an intense little structure for our line to cross. But every time we get older, we're part of that spiral Joanne was talking about. Every single season of our lives is another turn around that spiral.
Yep.
And sometimes spirals turn back in on each other and go right back down and come back up again. You know, there is so much movement in our lives, but we're always connected to that wonderful infinite line in some way, shape, or form. And that's the fascinating part of it for me. So I'm always asking questions of myself like, where am I going today? And when I do that, I think about connections in my life and who can I take with me on this journey? What can I do differently to invite someone else to accompany me if they want to? In what way can I help someone else see there's a different pathway for them? You know, modeling is what we're here to do. We always, every single one of us are role models, whether we know it or not. Someone's always looking at us, someone's always observing us, someone's always seeing our line and where it goes. And, there's this little wake that we leave in our line, don't we? And people feel that. And there's going to be someone, maybe a child, maybe an adolescent, maybe a colleague who's going to feel that. And they're going to notice your influence. But that's all because your infinite line never, ever leaves you. So you're everywhere with that.
So I wonder, and I think I'm going to pass this off to Joanne when I get finished with this, but as we move forward in life, we're making intentional choices that change where our next step's going to go. So this is where we are right now. And I think, everybody starts from a different place and moves at a different pace as to where we're going. And so I think I'm going to, put a reflection question out there. And are we moving towards the life we want, or often are we just staying busy?
Can I add to that?
Well, I was going to give it to Joanne.
No,
but
I mean your reflection question.
Sure.
Sure. So moving to what we want, staying busy, or moving away from what we don't want.
Ooh, good point.
Mm. I think it's real important to have, I guess I would call it a destiny point ahead of. It's important for me to have a destiny point ahead of me rather than simply trying to move away from something I don't like. I feel like it's not so much that you can't do it, it's just not nearly as much fun. I find it that one can move into another level, say in a spiral, through a desire to get away from something or a desire to get rid of a frustration in life, and that can lead us into an entire spiritual awakening, for instance. Oh, I'm moving away from this church, I'm going to this one over here, or I'm going over to this group over here, and look at this vision experience I had, and isn't that wonderful? But that was because I was trying to move away, right? So that works. But in the long run, I think at some point we have to turn around and look ahead and say, what is it that there's a thing about want I don't like as much. But that's because I got pulled into my ears early on that if you keep saying you want, then that the universe is a Xerox machine, and that's what you get. I want, but having a desire for something is obviously a motivation to move, change, etc. So I would say that the desire to move forward into something that looks better for us, or that looks more exciting, or whatever, to me is a more expansive way of changing where we are and what we're doing, rather than moving away from something we don't like. And that's just I was born an optimist, so I always see that we have options ahead of us, and sometimes people feel cut off from that and they've got to break from something behind them in order to go forward, and that's okay. But I think eventually you have to quit doing the breaking from the back and go ahead and move forward, because you have something ahead of you where you really want to be.
Okay.
And I think,
Can I
go
ask
ahead.
Joanne a quick question for
Sure.
clarification?
Oh yeah.
So when you started speaking, you talked about a destiny point.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean?
um I'm still trying to figure it out myself, actually,
Okay.
but I'm getting closer to it as time goes by. And a destiny point might be a place where I feel like I'm sinking into a wonderfully comfortable chair in the morning when I get up. And I have this knowing of exactly who I am, what my internal magic is, and how to express it. There's a feeling of, it's not just, what's the word? Not comfort. Oh, can't think of the word. It starts with a C. Not happiness, but
Contentment?
contentment. Yes, thank you so much. Not contentment per se, but something bigger than that. Not only do I know where I am and how I feel,
A sense
I
of
know
peace?
with, yeah, sense of peace and joy in the moment for almost every moment I'm in. That the
Mhm.
day that I'm in the zone where I'm expressing myself the way I want, or the way I want to be, that I'm not restricted by other people's judgments, that I have a freedom inside of myself that I can enjoy just as I sit here.
Mhm.
Don't have to do anything. There are no requirements.
Nope. So
So yeah,
my thought is you're already there.
right. That is quite true. But a lot of people don't. It's not up here.
Uh-huh. But that's because it's here.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, and they don't understand how to feel it there, I
Mm.
think.
And for those who aren't watching us,
Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Jean's talking about it being in her heart rather than in her mind.
Thank you, Jillian.
Thank you.
So it sounds, as you were talking, Joanne, it was interesting because what was going through my mind was how aligned this conversation is with the one we had last week around resilience. Because in going through the things that we go through, and we have change and we have uncertainty, and all of that has built resilience within us. And so as we go through, as this iteration or spiral or infinite line, it's an ongoing thing. There's no start point, there's no ending point. It's just we're building on what has gone before. And it's like, where are we going? Because I think every day, people are talking about what goals do you have? And so a goal feels like a starting point and an ending point, but it's kind of on when we're talking about an infinite line, it's just the next step. It's not that we're starting something new. It's just what's our next step? Where are we going to take this? What intentional choices are we making to move us forward to wherever? And like you were saying, Joanne, you want to have this kind of sitting in this comfy chair feeling. And then that's an intention. And how do you get there? And you learn to not let others, people's words, feelings, whatever, affect how you are. And you probably didn't feel that way 20, 30, 40 years ago. But you've got there over time. And so I think that's where this lifelong learning is. It's not just book learning, it's experiential learning as well.
Yeah,
So,
just like we're doing here, Jillian, right? Because,
absolutely.
So our listeners, we're trying to learn how to use this format to serve not only listeners, but also viewers.
Yeah.
And it's a learning curve, I think, for all of us. But it's a wonderful experience. And I would encourage anyone who's listening or viewing to give it a go, because you find out a lot about yourself in the experience of doing this. And we're having a great time doing it, I think. I know I am. Yeah.
Well, and it's a case of in life, if you avoid all the difficult moments and you only stay with what's easy or comfortable, you're kind of limiting yourself in what your options are in the future. So,
Indeed.
yes. I mean, I remember, was it 2 years ago when Jean and I think were having a conversation about being on camera, and I'm like, no. And look where we are today.
Yes, indeed.
And
Yeah.
so it's stepping out of your comfort zone sometimes in order for you to grow.
Mm.
And, are you comfortable where you are and you don't want to grow? And I think there's some people are okay with that. They're quite comfortable with where they are.
I
But
think
for
there's
some,
stages in our lives where we are comfortable with where we're at. And then we get to a point where it gets stale and we want to change. And that's when we decide it's okay to be a little uncomfortable to make that change. But I'm curious about the way everything we're doing together here, ladies, is going to affect your own infinite lines in the future, because I think that would be quite interesting to follow up in a year or two or three or whatever many years and see what you've done through the experience of working together here. I think that would be fabulous to witness, and I'm looking forward to it.
I
well,
think I'm sorry, Jillian. I think the
go ahead.
value I think the value for me, of participating in this kind of sharing of information and ideas and feelings is that I learn to better express what I know and what I feel, so that the other people, in this case just the two of you as we're talking, but then we're talking to a larger audience that'll make comments and etc. on the YouTube version, and I feel like I can bring my ideas about infinite lines or spirals or growth processes or stages I can talk about them more clearly because I practice with you all in doing this particular thing. Regardless of how many people see it, it doesn't matter. What matters is it makes me a better communicator because I'm practicing this with you all. So,
And I think it depends on, who steps into our life, whether we choose to continue that conversation with people.
Yes.
Because I could have chosen to say, no, thanks, Jean. I'm just going to do all this. It's uncomfortable. But I chose not to. And so here we are now having a conversation with Joanne and doing all these things together. So I think that's where that, continuous circle, line, infinity, whatever, the images that comes up. Everything that you do has an implication for what's coming next. You either open the door or you close it.
Indeed.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, everything has a consequence, whether it's a positive or negative one. There's always some sort of consequence to everything. But that's the thing about that infinite feeling, the fact that I'm on a trajectory, and consequence or no, I know that there's always going to be another decision and another consequence. And I can choose to change my trajectory at any time, change my direction. I can choose who I want to work with, to be with, to communicate with. And, all of that affects the direction that this wonderful infinite line is taking. And on that note too, I'm curious about inheritance and uh, legacy, because we may not be here physically, but it doesn't mean that what we create in our time here, in the wake that we leave behind, won't impact others through a legacy. And there are things that we have inherited from others as they have also left to carry us forward and to help us on our way. So that's been an interesting aspect of discovering and exploring an infinite line.
Well, I know from some of my reading and listening to audiobooks, I've come across Simon Sinek, and he has this infinite mindset that he talks about, and how if you go into a conversation and it's linear, there's a start and there's an end, you're going to go about whatever it is you're doing, whether it's a conversation or a project or whatever, differently than if you're thinking beyond the impact that this one event is going to have. And so in having that infinite mindset means that you're thinking beyond, you're thinking bigger, you're thinking about connections and those kinds of things. So it's definitely not an isolated conversation. It's out there, and definitely in the business world, which is where I kind of put my shingle. It's definitely talked about as this is a way of thinking differently.
Yes, and nonlinear thinking is another term for it. And I think that also, depending upon your makeup, some people find that easier than others to do. And some people find it easier to follow that track. It's like watching a movie or a television series or something where you have a lot of different characters and each character has a storyline and you're trying to keep track of it all. Sometimes I can do that really well. Other times it's like, okay, where'd this person come from and what's next, right? That kind of thing. But I think that's true of everyone. We have our moments where it all is very clear, and then our moments where things are a little muddled.
Yeah. And I think what you just pointed out too is, in other words, it's we can't compare our line with somebody else's. We're on a trajectory based on everything that's gone before, from our generational heritage, from our choices that we've made. And so knowing that, we're in this place at this time doing what we're doing, is based on the things that have come before. And if we don't like it or we're not comfortable here, then, we always have the option of making new choices.
Mm, yeah. I think that's really an interesting concept, Jillian, because some people are born into families of great wealth and some people aren't. And
Mhm.
yet, some of the poorest families produce people who end up having the biggest influence on a lot of different societies. And that's such a fascinating subject to explore because if you follow their infinite line, you find, as long as you can find credible information, um, of course, it's always best to talk directly to them, which is usually impossible. But if you can find credible information, it's quite interesting to follow that line and see where they came from and what they did to become such a person of influence in a larger aspect.
Yeah, and I think that when I'm listening to you speak just now, Jean, the idea of the infinite line suddenly included ripples.
Mm, indeed.
Because you're talking about people who may or may not seem to have been influential. Perhaps they weren't born into circumstances where it was very likely that they would write a best-selling book or whatever, and yet that doesn't, in a way, that doesn't really matter. If we really want to take some of the options we could take,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter where we started. There are so many examples. We can end up having that kind of ripple influence regardless. And we don't know. It may be we don't have to be famous to have influence. In the
Indeed.
long run,
Indeed.
if the line is infinite, then my children, my grandchildren, my friend that I just talked to last week who's been inspired to write a book because I talked to them for a while. It can be as simple as that. And somehow, oh my goodness, I'm the one that, sent them off in a direction. Or I remember when I was 13, I did not follow through on all of this, but that's okay. You can have all kinds of ideas at different ages.
You
But
can.
it was the first Earth Day,
Ooh.
and everybody was excited about being an environmentalist, and so was I. So sometimes it's not necessary for you to actually follow through on everything, but it's the feeling and the idea of being excited about something and being part of a change, even if you are not the president who puts out um, who tries to get stuff passed in Congress or whatever to get it done. You're still part of those ripples, and those
Mhm.
go on beyond you, even if they seem small.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that reminds me of spider webs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good segue.
Yeah.
It is,
Because,
and that spider web is interesting because I think it was either last year or the year before. One of the networking groups that I'm in is that we had 3 balls of yarn, and we had everybody that was in the event stand in a circle, and you tossed the ball of yarn to somebody and explained how you knew them, where you knew them from, what your connection was. And by the time everybody had done that with the 3 balls of yarn, we had a spider web in there. And that really demonstrated
Wow.
how connected just those people in that room were because of how they met somebody and how they knew them or how connected they were. And yeah, that spider web is a really interesting metaphor of how connected we are.
mm. And the thing about the spider's web is the slightest touch
Mm.
sets up a whole ripple, sets up a whole frequency of information.
Yep.
It's kind of what was it? telephone trees, the old telephone trees, that kind of thing. The slightest touch was like, oh, right, I've got to call my list. I've got to call my list. I've got to, right. And it sets up this whole series of informational kinds of calls. I'm showing my age with that one.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Back in the day.
Back in the
Indeed.
day. Yeah.
So going back into to looking at the growth, and I think it's also, and I think you hit on this a little bit too, Jean. It's about honoring the seasons and where you are. You're not going to be doing the same thing in the same way at each stage of your life. So it's just building on, and there again, going to the piece that Joanne was talking about, the spiraling. What you're doing is you're building on what you've learned and what you've done and how you're moving forward. So you're never in the same place each time. But I wonder too, and this is just a personal observation, is that if I'm growing through something and I didn't learn what I was supposed to learn while I went through it, somewhere along the line, I'm going to go through something similar. And I either go, I remember this. Maybe I'll make a different choice this time.
Yep.
Or I come back again for the third time and go, this really does feel familiar. Maybe it is time to make a different choice.
Yeah. Or the fourth time and go, well, doggone it. I thought I learned this already. Right?
Yeah. Totally true.
Yeah, I've experienced, because I'm stubborn.
No.
And I've experienced times when I have learned something from my experience. And I thought, right, okay, got it. Gone on and realized, oops, there's a part I didn't learn about, because look what's in my lap now. May not even be similar. It may be, look, I'm pointing this out to you and you've got to learn this. So it's like, it's time. Okay, fine. I got to learn that. And then you think, okay, I've got it. No.
No, don't have it.
Nope. You keep going, and believe it or not, something else will come up and it'll show you that you haven't got what you thought you did. And maybe you need to look at it again or in a different way. I think that's what catches people out, because we are so used to our conditioning that we look at things in the same way without realizing that all we need to do is take that one little step to the side and look at it a little differently, and we'll see a whole different aspect of it that was hidden.
Absolutely.
And that's
I
where the
think
treasure
sometimes
is.
too is, and you kind of bring it up that we've learned as we've gone through this, but even having multi-generational conversations, I think, is valuable, because we can learn from the generations that are coming up behind us as much as we've learned from the generations that have gone before us. And, and that's where I think that infinity, that, infinite line comes in, is that, this younger generations have different ways of communicating. They have different tools at their disposal that we didn't have and was not available for those who have gone before us.
Yes.
I remember that we had a great aunt, and she passed when she was 99. And just think about those years and what had transpired in the years that she was alive, because, they would just, there were so many things they didn't have at the beginning. And here she was at 95, I think, and I gave her a smartphone. And showing her the benefits of having it and it was just eye-opening that those things didn't exist. And, so I do think that there again, it's how do we grow personally? What path are we on, and how does that intersect with the paths of other people?
Well, see, I love that intergenerational thing. I am a firm believer that older people need youngsters around.
Oh, yeah.
You know, um, my partner has just become a bilateral amputee. And today, one of our neighbors came over to say hello, find out how he was doing, talk to him. And she brought with her her 3-year-old son.
Mm.
And he made such an impact on John because he was so very innocently asking questions. You know, wanted to know, do you still have feet?
Oh,
You know, and things like that. But it wasn't in any way, shape, or form except absolute innocent curiosity.
Yep.
And if people could see people who are in John's position in that way, could you imagine the difference in the conversations and the difference in the care that would happen? And
yes.
John still talks about that. He was so taken by this little 3-year-old asking these questions,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So intergenerational kinds of communications are so important. They're so important, not just for the youngster, but also for the elder.
Right. And I'd like to bring up that that when you were talking, Jean, about the time, running into the same thing again and again, I found that I could be asked the same question over and over at different times in my life, and I basically still wouldn't, quote, get it, unquote. There was something in the way, always. There was something in the way. And then somebody that I didn't even know that well. It wasn't some kind of in-depth therapeutic environment or something like that. But someone would ask the same question. I think it was about why I was focused on needing a mate or somebody to love me or something like that. And it was definitely the proverbial light bulb going on in my head, and then moving down into my heart space, which I think was the part was missing before. Oh, well, I don't have to be all needy and whatnot. I think that was the question, emotionally needy and whatnot. Wait a second. And I really felt it in my body. And that was when I finally accepted that, oh, well, then, and I did, it actually changed the way I behaved overall and who I was around other people for the rest of my life. But it took until I was about 43. So
But see, that was that line intersecting with you at the right
yes,
time,
at the
wasn't it?
right time. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
I just thought that was a great example of that. Be patient with ourselves, because so much of the time when we're going to school, when we're kids and whatnot, it's all about avoiding making mistakes so we get a good grade on the test and things like that. That's a goal. But we learn from mistakes. And sometimes it's okay to wait until you're ready, I think, in some sense, and maybe not be so hard on ourselves for not learning when I was 13 or something, this particular lesson.
And I wonder if what you're saying, Joanne, builds on us staying curious.
Oh, yes. Very
Because I
good.
think sometimes, when you look at kindergartners, and like you were saying, Jean, they're curious. They want to know why.
They want to know
And
what,
then
they want to know who, they want to know
right.
where.
And at some point that kind of gets, to where it's either not socially acceptable or it's appropriate or whatever. And then we start to get into adulthood, and then we're told, stay curious, because that opens doors for you. It makes life more interesting. So I wonder if that kind of fit into, our learning process. We learn because we're curious. We want to know more. We want to know why. How does this work, or why doesn't this work?
Or what do we need to change to help it work, or what do we need to change to see and feel and know different things about whatever we're trying to discover. Because
Absolutely.
it's like stepping off just that little bit to see the treasure that's hidden. You can do that. And I love the fact that we're talking about curiosity in this way. Because if we do have a lot of compassion for ourselves, where we're at, what we're dealing with, what we're looking at next, maybe what we need to let go of, you know,
Mm.
we run the whole gamut of emotional distress as we go through that, from grief to joy to, gosh, I accomplished that. That's great, and we can be quite ecstatic about that because a lot of times our accomplishments are fleeting because we have the very next thing in front of us, don't we? So celebration's important.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think too that a lot of times, and we talked about this in the beginning, that, oftentimes it's like, I'm going to start this, I'm going to finish this. This is my goal. This is my line. But, if you have that mindset, then you're not going to continually grow. And usually when you're going through something, you've learned something that changes your outlook. It changes your viewpoint. And so you're never the same. So it really never is just a straight line. It's just a continuation. Like Joanne was saying, it's this spiral. It's this building on what we've done moving forward. And so, it's like every day you have an opportunity to start something new, to do
Indeed.
something different, to make a change.
Indeed.
Hmm.
Right. Well, with that, I think it's probably time that we call it a night. But thank you very much for being here, Joanne and Jillian. Thank you to our viewers and our listeners. We hope that you really got something from our conversation. We get a little carried away and go down tangents and some rabbit holes on occasion, but there are little snippets of treasure and magic and all of it. And I certainly hope we have touched you in some way and can help you on your way as our lines cross yours. So thank you so very much for being here. And we will be speaking with you next week. Until then, bye for now.